one of the things is we see bikes and scooters and the different technologies here more in a place like Darien, New Canaan, Westport than we do in other sections of the state. And I think the laws and statutory regulations have been slow to keep up with the technology. And I think what legislators have finally done is try and take us out of the gray area and really kind of put some concrete rules in place where they weren't before. So e-bikes and e-scooters are closely regulated or closely related to motorcycle laws that are in place, and motorcycle laws and moped laws have been on the books for years and years. But this new electric and battery powered vehicles, there hasn't been any kind of guidance on it, and I think they've finally done that. So what the biggest changes will be starting on Wednesday is that e-bikes with no pedals and batteries over 750 watts, but under 3,500 watts will now be defined as motor-driven cycles. That didn't mean much to me when I first read that, but having researched it a little further, it makes a lot more sense. If you have what we would call an e-bike that has a battery or powered over 750 watts, you need a valid driver's license. Now, if you have an e-bike or electric type scooter type bike vehicle that's not over 3,500, but over 3,700 watts, not only will you require a license, you'll need a motorcycle endorsement, a registration, and insurance. So very identical to motorcycles. So these are the statutes that the umbrella over the whole state, and I'd like to kind of really talk more about what's going on in town here. We all see that right before Middlesex Middle School opens up in the morning, there's a parade of e-scooters of young kids going up on the sidewalks. What most parents don't know is that e-scooters, e-bikes, and bicycles are not allowed by state law on sidewalks. So a municipality has the right to change or enact an ordinance that can prohibit that, but there hasn't been many that have done that in Connecticut. In fact, I'm not aware of one. So as a parent of young kids, what I say, I prefer that you stay on the scooter on the sidewalk when you're heading to school, sure. But technically and generally within a law, that is prohibited. So there's still areas that remain gray. And I think I don't have a position yet to take one stance or another to say that we should have a position on whether scooters should not be allowed on sidewalks. Kids from, I don't know how 12 years and up, 12 years and under. I don't know where you draw that line, but those are the facts. And, back to the Darien stats, have we had accidents that have involved e-bikes and scooters? Sure, we have. Have we had some serious ones? We have. Have there been some residents of town involved in serious accidents outside of town? We have, unfortunately. But it hasn't been to the level most people are kind of reporting back based on what they're hearing on social media. So we've taken the approach since last year of really kind of tackling the awareness and the parental responsibility, and rather than an enforcement approach. However, come Wednesday, we really are going to continue the approach of making sure everybody, however we can reach them, whether it's in person, whether it's through the schools, whether it's through social media or news articles, that there are new laws in effect and enforcement can be taken. That's not going to be our first choice, but people that maybe are repeat offenders or don't really kind of hear to our advice, we're going to look at it pretty critically. We're in the business of safety, and we want to make sure that not only are people heeding our advice, but that it's out there in the first place. And it doesn't always fall on the police department to make sure that everybody's safe. And we don't want to be the bad guys and trying to enforce statutory regulations all the time. And we'd much rather go the route of education and awareness. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of gray here. I quickly sent something out in the chat while you were all in executive session, hoping to specifically answer any critical concerns. I didn't want to waste anybody's time, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, even the state's not even caught up with all this. The technology is moving faster than the state can putting in place regulations.
Questions for the chief? Mike.
Thanks, Chief, for the presentation. One thought, is hopefully we can keep track of what's going on with these devices. So if we can see something that's trending in a different direction or an increase in these kinds of problems, I appreciate what you're saying about what, the statistics versus what, some of the online chatter may be. And the second, just in terms of a, suggestion is we consider, educational, efforts. I think the citizens in this town, like others really, statistics, factual. These are the kinds of accidents that we're seeing. These are the kinds of injuries that we're seeing. And this is when they tend to happen and why they tend to, happen. And, just instead of an overall, like, well, we need to have these things be driven or operated safely. Yes. But, even pictures, this is what's happening when you're careless. This is how you're getting hurt. This is how you're hurting people and property of others.
Well, you're exactly right. And the 13 of us that are on the chat tonight, we could go into the wee hours of the night telling just experiences that we've all had on our own. And I know I've had face-to-face conversations about specific incidents with some of you. One thing that I'm not sure everybody is on board with or on the same page with is, as soon as you send your child out on the road, and whether it's a bicycle, e-bike, or even they have to know the rules of the road. That's a requirement across the board. Our office administrator, before he left for the day today, he's telling us a story where a full-grown gentleman blew by him at 25 miles an hour while he was trying to make a right-hand turn, and he went by him right on the right-hand side. That could have been a fatality. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. I still think it comes back to when parents in our community are funding our children with or gifting our children with these devices, they have to understand that there comes a strong, heavy responsibility with it. It's not just sending a kid out on a bicycle on Chasmars Pond Road and riding around in a cul-de-sac, and I use that because I grew up there and we played street hockey in the street. But it's very serious, and I don't think the parents are on board just yet, and that's why we've taken the approach that we have. Again, to back up a little further, our police association got on board with it, and we had an incentive program where if we see the kids that are wearing their helmets and they're following the rules of the road and they're abiding by the rules that they're supposed to be, we're giving coupons for slices of pizza at Heights Pizza. We don't think that the rule, our approach should be to throw on lights and sirens, take one of our police cars out of service for a moment, and hope that the kid stops to begin with, and then call the parents and have the parents make arrangements to get this bike home because they were outside of the regulations. We all have countless stories, but one of the things I want to just quickly put on record is one of our bike shops, not in town necessarily here, but these are the authorities on this kind of stuff. And, we've had, or he cited, or they cited, someone would come in with an e-bike that had been aftermarket modified and complaining that the brakes were squealing or not working properly. And it was determined that the regulator or the modifier or the governor, however you want to refer to it, was removed from the vehicle, and the brakes could no longer keep up with the speeds that this vehicle was performing at. And the bike shop, or whatever the shop was, said, we don't have a leg to stand on here. We're not allowed to work on these types of things because it's just not it's not appropriate. We're not authorized. We're not certified. And that's what's happening. After a 30-second YouTube video, someone here in Darien can buy a $5,000 e-bike, and that's regulated for US standards at 20 miles an hour, and have it go 55 by the end of the day. And one other point I'll make, and this is factual as well, I like to deal in the realm of fact, is a lot of these kids are wearing bike helmets, and bicycle helmets are typically tested at a 14-mile-an-hour crash incident. And these bikes are not going 14 miles an hour. They're much more suited for wearing a motorcycle helmet, but there's no regulation that requires an e-bike rider to wear a motorcycle helmet. In fact, as far as helmets go, and I don't want to get into the minutia of it and go down the rabbit's hole with the classifications, but a class 1 or a class 2 bike, which are the lower level bikes that need to stay with below 20 miles an hour and 28 miles an hour, you have to have a helmet. However, once it becomes over 750 watts, as far as the wattage of the vehicle goes, it becomes a motor driven cycle. So it's a different classification. Now you have to have a driver's license, but you don't have to wear a helmet at that point because it's not considered an e-bike. All e-bike riders, no matter what the age is required, they're required to wear a helmet. But once you get over the 750 watts point and under 3,500 watts, it's only a motor driven cycle. So it gets gray once again. And then once you're over 3,700 watts, it's just considered a motorcycle altogether, whether it's electric or gas powered. And I think the trouble that the state has had, and all the states have had, is we've always dealt with CCs and how big the motors were and how much that could propel the vehicle. And we're not dealing with CCs with battery powered vehicles or electric vehicles. So the rules are a little different. And I think the lawmakers are a little bit behind the 8 ball with catching up here, but I think coming Wednesday, that what they've put in place is sending us in the right direction.
Yeah,
Marcy.
oh, sorry. So this is a kitchen table conversation in my house daily. I'm really close to it. It's probably one of my largest concerns on safety in town, especially because, like I said, I have a 12-year-old middle schooler who is a boy and absolutely, totally attracted to this scooter life that so many of our middle schoolers and high schoolers are using. I think this is a twofold issue. I was fortunate enough that I was able to take him to a scooter bike training class at the depot this afternoon, and he's been riding his scooter around town. We have very strict rules. He's only allowed to ride it at Waverly Park. He's only allowed to ride it up and down our dead end street. He does not ride it on any of the main roads in town. He's too young. He doesn't have a driver's license. He's an inexperienced driver, but he's had experience driving with it, him and his father and friends. He went to the driving class today and came back, and I said, "What did you learn?" And there was a lot of rules that he learned. how to turn, how to stop at a light, how to, pass on a left-handed side, all these things they think were really, really important. And I think it's imperative that parents have that opportunity to send their kids, if they're going to make these choices to use e-bikes, to use scooters around town, there should be training their kids the rules of the road. Doesn't matter what their experiences is. We don't do, trial by fire here and just say, send your kid out and see how they do. I think it's really, really the parents' responsibility to find some way to teach their kids the rules of the road and how to appropriately drive them. The other side of it is we're dealing with youths, right? We're dealing with kids that have, underdeveloped frontal cortex lobes. They're driving around just like handing a 16-year-old boy or a 16-year-old girl their driver's license. There's going to be this window of growing and learning and making mistakes. Unfortunately, when you don't have metal surrounding you, your mistake could cost your life. So the other part is I think we need to do better at making anybody who comes into this town understand that they are sharing the roads with our youth. Drivers need to be aware, and how we do that, I don't know. So long, the police commission, the police department have been trying to put this initiative out to make drivers aware. But is it more, do we look into more signage? Do we look into more, ways in order to, when any driver walks into this town, they are aware of the fact that this is a culture, no matter how much we want to stop it, no matter how much of his parents we want to turn out and say, don't do it in town because we're terrified your kid's going to get hurt. People have choices. And our community is, it's right now a community that's filled with children that want some freedoms. These are kids coming out of COVID. These are kids that are coming out of a time when they, have spent so much of their social life on devices. And I support kids getting out, having some independence, being social with their friends, meeting down at McGuan and playing baseball for a little while and jumping on their scooters and going home. There's so much of that that's beautiful. And I think it's the adult's responsibility to create the community that kids can do that safely. Yes, kids need to learn how to use it. Yes, there needs to be legislation and laws that we're not throwing our kids on things that should be classified as motorcycles, things that have way too much power behind them, things that are. So I think we're doing all the right things. I think we need to continue with the education component of things on both levels, both the drivers. I would definitely love to see high schoolers and kids that are newly 16 be continuously reminded. That's my biggest fear. You get some 17 or 18-year-old pulling out of the high school, driving down to the Heights, and some kid comes flying out of the middle school. You've got two really immature, underdeveloped kids that are out on the road. That's where my fears lie. So I think it's important that we do continue with this education process. I think we do put some signage around town, and I think we need to ramp up the opportunity for bicycle training for our youths in town. I don't think we're going to stop this. I don't think that there's going to be any initiative. I mean, I have said to every parent in town, it's illegal to have your kid on the road. Do you know that this is dangerous? And people know their choices, but they have the rights, and certainly their kids need that opportunity to have a little bit of independence and drive around this beautiful town that we've created for them. So whatever we can do to try to look at those two scopes, like I said, educating the driver of the vehicle and educating the driver of the bike.
Thank you, Marcy. Other comments or questions for the chief? Sarah.
Chief, I'd like to thank you and all of your staff. I know that many have been involved with the education piece. And I know that you've gone personally to the middle school. I know that you're trying to help with the kids, and I think it's great, and we really appreciate it. Like Marcy, I share a lot of concern. I don't have any children of that age, but I see, as many do on social media, people concerned. Marcy, I would echo your thoughts, but I would also echo for parents and everyone else. We're all distracted in our lives, and we're on our phone, and we shouldn't be when we're driving, and we're racing, we're running, we're doing whatever it is we're doing. And I think the more education that we can do, the better. Aiming at parents, aiming at anyone in town. I'm concerned timing wise that morning period, if you go up Hollow Tree up to the middle school and all the kids on the bikes, it's a busy time. It's people rushing to the train. It's people, going to work and so forth. And it's a really tough time of day. And I know after the kids are getting out of school, they're coming out too, and parents are running around picking kids up or dropping off. And so again, just the more education that you can do. Thank you very much for what you're doing. And we ask that you just continue. So thank you.
Perfect. Other questions or comments?
Hey, Chief, I wanted, you touched on the helmet. And I don't understand like the 3,500, the whatever, but bottom line is at the faster speed, do you need to wear a motorcycle helmet if it's considered a motorcycle or not?
Well, not even, it doesn't have to be considered a motorcycle. It's even these e-bikes are traveling at speeds that far exceed the protection that a typical bike helmet is going to provide you. So there is something called there's something in between a regular bicycle helmet and a motorcycle helmet that's regulated for a faster moving e-bike. I don't have it at my fingertips here, but the bit quick example, one of our supervisors saw a child or juvenile on a e-bike, and I forget, I probably told this story to some of you, weaving in and out on the post road, going well over 35 miles an hour. And the kid was gentlemanly enough to stop when the police officer stopped, and we wanted to make a positive contact and say, hey, what are you doing? And mom came to the scene on all that, and officer explained to mom that seemed like son was going way faster than even the speed limit. And she pulled up that app, Life 360. I don't know if all you were familiar with that. You can track your kids. And she said, yep, sure enough, he was going 44 miles an hour because it tracks the speed through GPS of the phone. And this was a young gentleman who had a high quality e-bike that had a governor to be sold in the States, but knew how to remove it and was able to travel far past the speeds that it was equipped to travel. So first thing I told that supervisor, and he had told me he passed it along as well, is a bike helmet's not going to help you in a crash when you're doing 44 miles an hour. It's just not. It's not. A bike helmet might not even help you in a crash that's in 10 miles an hour. So these are the things we all need to think about. And one more point, it's the dead horse at this point, but let's think about even before e-bikes came on the market. Bicyclists themselves, for my 30-year career in law enforcement, don't typically tend to follow rules of the road. They don't. I'll say that. I'm not saying it painting it with a broad brush, but we've all seen it. When I leave Hecker Avenue at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's that bike group that's going through town, my light is green, and 15 bikes go through the red light, go in the same direction that I'm going. It's just that's the culture. So now we're sending our kids out, and someone mentioned COVID. I think maybe Sarah or Marcy, you mentioned COVID. Nobody takes the bus anymore to school. I'd say it's not the majority anyway. And we've had problems with traffic. We all know that in and around the schools, and with the e-bikes coming on stage these days, I know kids that are taking e-bikes from Tokenique Road to Middlesex Middle School. So that's something that never happened. So we're all kind of adjusting to it, and parents think it's great because parents have their morning to themselves now. And but it does present other problems, and my wish is that we all can get on board and know the severity of it. And I hate to have a tragedy happen for us to all recognize the severity of it. That's why this time last year during the fall, we tried to go the education and awareness route before Christmas came and everybody's making these purchases for these e-bikes for their children. And then most importantly, before spring, when everybody was going to be using them to go to schools.
So Jared, Captain, Chief, sorry, you
You know me a
mentioned,
long time, Monica.
you mentioned that it's illegal to ride a bike or an e-bike on the sidewalk.
Generally by state law, You're not supposed to ride a bicycle, an e-scooter, or an e-bike on a sidewalk. And if you are, you have to yield to people that would be walking there. And like I mentioned previously, a municipality can move to have an ordinance put in place to, there's a couple of different ways you could do it. You could ban them all together. You could have designated areas that allow e-bikes on sidewalks, or choose what most municipalities do, and they don't have any specific ordinance at all, but generally they're prohibited on sidewalks.
So with that being said, if there's an accident, a serious accident, which ends up in a lawsuit because it's illegal, that would jeopardize obviously whoever is hurt, but also,
It'll point back to the law, right?
yeah, okay. So maybe people need to understand that also.
Well, when you're pulling out of Whole Foods and you're looking to take a right, maybe to head up Ledge Road, you may not you're not looking right. You're looking left because that's the way you need to merge. But if a kid's coming on an e-scooter down the sidewalk from like the public garage, Department of Public Works, you're not expecting that. And that's why there's laws in place and we've had that exact scenario.
And that goes kind of back to my point of maybe if we find these areas that could be difficult, that we consider some signage for the driver, right? Look both ways. We're sharing the road with bikers, whatever. Just as we're looking through this scope, I just think that there's two parties responsible. You've got the e-bike driver and then you've got
Absolutely.
the vehicle driver. And both of them are in a new scope. And one is underage and one could be anything from 16 to 160. All different types of people that we're communicating this with. I think if we start to identify areas that might be heavy on congestion with our younger travelers, it might be beneficial for us to consider some warnings or however we can do that. Just pay attention to what other communities are doing and get some ideas.
I would never argue with that.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say, just from my experience in the last few years, is whether it's a state road versus a town road and us putting signage or on private property, it all kind of, it gets a little, there's other boxes that need to be checked in those circumstances, but I agree with you 100%.
But it should, I guess my point is that we should probably always consider it in our traffic studies that now we're running and sharing this road with kids and bikes, and it should be considered as we study the traffic in this town.
Other questions or comments for the chief? Chief, thank you. Much appreciated. We appreciate
Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity.